I once believed the Dominion would last forever. For 3,000 cycles, our banners blotted out the stars, our anthem echoed across 1,000 subjugated worlds, and our Emperor's will flowed through the galaxy like an unbroken current. We were inevitability itself, an empire before which all resistance was crushed, all rebellion silenced, all hope suffocated. So when the High Council summoned me to review a transmission from a primitive, backwater world called Earth, I expected nothing more than the usual. Trembling voices, desperate pleas and eventual surrender. I arrived in the Grand Hall of Judgment with boredom in my veins, the hollow screen ignited, and instead of fear, I saw her. A human woman, standing before her world's leaders and armies, spoke as if we were the lesser species. "This is Admiral Selene Ward of the Unified Earth Command," she declared, her voice steady, her eyes unflinching. "We will not yield our sovereignty. Withdraw your fleets." The chamber rippled with shock, then laughter. My fellow generals mocked the message, some from amusement, others from disbelief. The Emperor merely watched, silent and still, before issuing a single command: erase a continent. Then they will kneel. As our doomsday fleet prepared for the demonstration strike, another human broadcast arrived, this time from a battlefield on their moon. I expected panic. Instead, I witnessed madness. Human soldiers advanced through gunfire and explosions, outnumbered 100 to 1. They fought without hesitation, without retreat, without fear. I leaned closer, studying their eyes. No pheromones of terror. No body tremors, nothing. Why? Why did these fragile creatures stare into death as if it were a mere inconvenience? Whispers spread through the officer ranks. What are these humans? Why don't they break? The council dismissed such questions, calling humanity a curiosity, not a threat. But I had seen something in their defiance, something ancient, something dangerous. At the War Declaration Assembly, our Supreme General stood before the entire Dominion and spoke the words that would ignite a galactic inferno: "Humans will kneel." Seconds later, a final human transmission cut through our networks, interrupting our ceremony. Admiral Selene Ward appeared once more, bruised, bloodied, but unbowed. Her voice was cold, certain, unmistakable. "Kneel first." The screen went dark, silence swallowed the chamber, and in that silence, for the first time in my life, I felt a chill. We believed the Soul Campaign would be nothing more than another swift and silent conquest. The Dominion fleet, 300 capital-class warships and 1,000 escorts, moved through the void like an iron storm. Our admirals boasted of victory timetables. Our strategists argued only over how quickly Earth would fall. After all, their defenses were primitive, their fleets skeletal, their technology decades, if not centuries, behind our own. Our prediction matrix displayed a 98.2% certainty of early victory. In the Dominion, such a number was considered absolute, flawless, unchallengeable. And yet, before we even reached Earth, that certainty began to crack. The first engagement above Mars was expected to be ceremonial, our overwhelming presence crushing their spirit before the true war even began. Instead, we faced something maddening. Human ships did not flee. They did not cower behind their orbital stations. They charged. Like wounded beasts, they lunged at our dreadnought lines, their movements wild and unpredictable. They rammed our cruisers head-on, sacrificing entire crews just to cripple a single ship. They detonated their own reactors in suicidal blasts that tore open our formations. This was not strategy. This was insanity. We lost 12 ships in the first hour. 12, against a species that had no right to challenge even one of our fleets. The council analysts accused our sensors of malfunctioning. The admirals accused one another of incompetence. But deep within, I realized the truth. Humans do not follow rules, not ours, not logics, not even nature's. When we finally breached the Mars defense ring and silenced its guns, we expected their comm channels to beg for terms. Instead, we received a single phrase, spoken in 100 accents from 1,000 human voices across every frequency: "No surrender." That was when the tremor began. Not in the fleet, no, our ships still held formation. The tremor was in us. I had faced zealots before, fanatics, machines that fought without emotion. But this This was different. Humans fought without hope of survival, and yet with absolute conviction of victory. It defied all logic, all science, all experience. They fought as if the universe itself would bend before them simply because they refused to bow. For the first time in my long service to the Dominion, I felt something heretical. Something that no officer of my standing should ever feel. Doubt. If this was only the beginning, if this was what humanity was like when cornered at the edge of their system, what would they become when driven to the heart of their rage? As the flames of Mars still burned behind us, I looked toward the distant blue shimmer of Earth and felt a shadow coil around my thoughts. We had not marched toward easy prey. We had marched toward a nightmare of our own making. Earth rose before us, blue, fragile and alone. We surrounded it in an unbreakable ring of steel. 1,000 warships, 10,000 guns, enough firepower to shatter continents with a single coordinated volley. From orbit, we eclipsed their sun, drowning their world in manufactured night. Fear was our oldest weapon, and never in Dominion history had it failed. Their moon fell first. The lunar bastion, their final line of space defense, burned in silence as our dreadnoughts ripped it apart stone by stone, fortress by fortress. Their colonies across the outer planets were hunted down and erased. Supply convoys became fireballs against the void. Their satellites were swept from orbit like dust before a storm. The noose tightened. The planet gasped, and yet they did not break. We expected chaos to consume them, nations to fracture, leaders to flee, armies to dissolve. Instead, we witnessed something baffling. Yes, there were riots, fires, and mourning, but there were also rallies that shook their cities, voices raised not in surrender, but in unison. Humans did not splinter beneath pressure. They merged. Our analysts panicked. This was not in the predictive models. On every world we had conquered before, species turned on one another in the face of Dominion wrath. Civil wars erupted. Governments collapsed. Survival became every citizen for themselves. But humans chose a different path. Their fractured nations, once divided by borders, skin, belief, and pride, cast it all aside. They forged a single chain from billions of souls and named their cause with chilling simplicity: Earth's Last Stand. Their leaders did not hide underground. They stood in the open, on ruined streets, atop crumbling monuments, amidst crowds aflame with rage and hope. They spoke to their people not of survival, but of victory. Their unity infected their armies first, then their civilians, and eventually, even us. I recall intercepting a human broadcast, played across their darkened skies, projected against the clouds by burning hologram towers. A single sentence roaring from a billion throats: we do not kneel. When our emperor ordered atmospheric burners deployed across their oceans, boiling storms into the air, they responded not with pleas but with counterattacks. When our kinetic rods fell like metal meteors upon their cities, they emerged from the rubble-wielding rifles, knives or bare fists if nothing else remained. This was not war as we understood it. This was defiance given shape. And something else began to stir. Something far more dangerous than human: weapons admiration. Even among Dominion ranks, whispers traveled through the lower decks of our warships. Officers spoke in secret. Soldiers questioned orders. A few called humanity an abomination, but others, softly and only when they thought no one listened, called them magnificent. Because if a species so divided could stand as one, then perhaps the Dominion, with all its chains and fear, was not as eternal as we believed. I looked down upon that burning world and felt an unfamiliar truth tightening around my throat. Earth was not dying. Earth was awakening. And soon, we would awaken something else, something even the Dominion had no weapon against: a symbol. I had expected the war to be clinical, an exercise of geometry and physics. Planets fall when velocity and mass decide they must. People, in my experience, simply rearrange themselves to accept the inevitable. Then they sent her. The transmission arrived like a blade through silk. Our High General, bronze-plated, voice like thunder, opened the diplomatic channel and demanded submission with the ceremonial contempt of a conqueror. The entire Dominion watched. The grand hall brightened to the image of a ruined world behind a single figure, a woman standing amid smoke, ash drifting like gray snow around her shoulders. She did not stand behind bulletproof glass or armored screens. She stood on rubble. She stood in the open. They called her Admiral Selene Ward. To us, she was only a human, a symbol we had meant to snuff out. "Humans will kneel," our general intoned into the void, a decree thrown like a gauntlet. He expected groveling, an apology, the soft crackle of surrender. He expected, in short, the universe to continue following its accustomed rules. She looked at him as though he were the one ignorant of the rules. Her hands were small. Her voice cut across the assembly like a clear bell. "Kneel first." The chamber went still in a way our instruments cannot measure. Silence is not merely the absence of sound to the Dominion. It is a pressure. It presses into the lungs. It rearranges priorities. What followed should have been predictable: outrage from my generals, a directive to extinguish the voice, orders carved in blood and fire. Instead, something far worse for the Empire occurred. Her words, 2 sharp syllables, fell into the minds of millions like seeds. They spread. Dominion citizens, officers, even low-level technicians copied and replayed her broadcast in secret. Her posture, the set of her jaw, the way ash stuck to her hair, became icons traded in the private feeds. Where we intended to intimidate, we had illuminated a beacon. I watched the reactions slowly ripple through our networks. A clerk in a logistics node paused in the middle of classifying plundered goods, stared at a clandestine loop of her speech, and wept, then continued his work with a different look in his compound eyes. A midshipman on the lower decks of a carrier hid her speech feed under maintenance logs and watched it with the reverence of prayer. Our propaganda machines, built to erode hope, found themselves hijacked. Even they could not rewrite the rawness of her conviction. The emperor, who had built his authority on the predictable collapse of those beneath him, saw a weakness in motion: influence. He ordered a ground assault, final, overwhelming, surgical. Kill the symbol, slay the voice, and the people would scatter like dust. 3 planetary strike forces were mobilized. I was given command of one such force. The mantle of a decisive blow pressed like a star helmet to my brow. We planned with the precision of celestial mechanics. Drop zones, shock anchors, suppressor arcs, flame columns timed to melt the bones of their cities, and the idea of resistance along with them. We would land, recover the body, and broadcast the proof of submission to every listening world. Victory would be clean. The history books of the Empire would say no more than a footnote. We fell upon Earth as a winter of iron. Landing pods screamed through the smoke and split the night like comets. Our sky fields opened and disgorged ranks of metal-clad soldiers, each sculpted and trained to obey. We marched, as conquests always do, toward the assumed corpse of resistance. What we found instead was ritual. They did not flee. They gathered. They brought their dead into the streets and built processions from the rubble. They wrapped their leaders' faces with cloth and carried their banners not in secrecy, but in display. Religious icons of every kind, painted, carved, sewn from ash, hung next to tattered national flags. Children stood on broken cars and threw rocks at our boots. A choir of voices rose, ragged and raw, singing something I could not translate. And yet the melody carried like a wound across the ranks. It stitched into the marrow of the soldiers who watched from their armored lenses. We pressed forward. We executed our protocols. We struck. Buildings collapsed. Thermobaric pulses turned plazas into glassy moons. We found bodies, some human, some not, shattered into anonymous pieces. We dragged them, as ordered, toward the central plaza to make the spectacle of victory. And then they brought their queen before us, not on a dais, not with a crown. She was not the monarch of legend we expected to find behind gilded doors. Admiral Selene Ward had not fled. She had not been hidden away by a cabal of loyalists. Instead, she walked through the smoke, flanked by ragged captains and civilians who had taken rifles and sledgehammers and improvised armor. Her uniform bore scorch marks. Her left sleeve was torn. Blood dusted her lips. She looked smaller than the holograms we had seen, but words have proportions the body cannot match. She stepped into the path of our commanding officer and raised no weapon. For a moment, the universe rearranged itself again. Orders stalled, mouths opened, and the rifles aimed at her chest wavered. I was certain then that the ritual we intended to perform, kill the leader, fold the people, would succeed. I believed in the geometry of subjugation. I had plotted it on crystal grids and felt the cold confidence of victory. I raised my banner and ordered the execution. A single shot rang. It did not stop her voice. Instead, her words spread. Propaganda turned literal. Her blood made slogans. Her fall was not silence. It was ignition. Even now, the memory turns my vision to salt. Soldiers on both sides stood and watched as the crowd took the fallen form and lifted it into the sky, not to glorify death, but to vow continuation. They chanted her name until the sound itself seemed to be a weapon. I had expected the body to end the story. Instead, it became a beginning. We fell from orbit in perfect formation, an iron rain, each drop a soldier, each soldier a promise of conquest. Our war doctrine called it First Landing, the most decisive step in planetary pacification. 93 conquered worlds had proven the model flawless. Strike fast, scorch hard, shatter resistance before it learns to hope. Earth should have been the 94th. Our commanders stood with renewed confidence. The Emperor's voice thundered through our channels. Break the humans! Burn their symbols! End this. We believed we would. We were wrong. The first wave touched down in the ruins of what humans called New York. A graveyard of broken spires greeted us. Skyscrapers gutted and blackened, glass melted into rippling flows like frozen oceans. Yet the absence of life was a lie. Every shadow hid a rifle, every window a scope, every sewer a tunnel, every toppled tower a fortress. Humans did not defend their cities, they weaponized them. Our vanguard marched in spearhead formation, confident, disciplined, unstoppable. Then the ground swallowed them. Entire platoons vanished into sinkholes laced with explosives. Streets imploded, buildings collapsed outward by design, and sniper fire rained with mathematical precision. When our armored walkers advanced, humans ignited gas mains beneath them, turning avenues into firestorms. Their engineers, their civilians, even their children understood their terrain the way we understood star charts. They fought like no species we had ever encountered. Most races beg, many flee. Some pretend courage for a time. But humans counterattacked. My unit secured a district of shattered towers and raised Dominion banners along the ridge. I expected the enemy to scatter. Instead, a human battalion stormed upward through their own wreckage, climbing, leaping, firing, stumbling, bleeding, and not one of them slowed when struck. Their bodies fell forward, not back. The sight unnerved even seasoned veterans in my ranks. Worse still were the unarmed. I witnessed a cluster of civilians, no armor, no rifles, nothing but broken bottles and burning debris, charge a Dominion suppressor squad. They died before they closed the distance. But in those brief seconds, they distracted us. And because of that distraction, the human ambush hidden behind them cut down an entire company of our elite. Their dead were not deterrents. They were tactics. By nightfall, the first wave of fighting had devolved into brutal close-quarters combat. The humans jammed our comms with white noise, severed our supply corridors, and struck in small, fast-moving packs. They feigned retreat, then circled behind us. They pretended to be wounded, then detonated charges as med units approached. They even weaponized weather, flooding tunnels, collapsing frozen river crossings, turning storms into cover. We ultimately won that first battle. Victory, however, tasted like ash. Our casualties surpassed projections by a factor of 9. Our Emperor sealed the numbers, a first in Dominion history. Morale risk, the decree said. A silent admission of humiliation. As the smoke settled over the ruins, I walked the battlefield. The streets were choked with bodies, ours and theirs. Metal limbs jutting from broken asphalt, human hands still clutching weapons. Blood pooled in the cracks of shattered roads, indistinguishable between soldier and civilian. We had taken the city, yes, But in taking it, we learned a truth our empire was not prepared to face. Humans do not fear death. They expect it, and fight harder because of it. Then came the message. At first, we thought it a tactical blaze, fires spreading in the ruins of their central district. But as drones rose into the smoke, the shape became clear. Across the blackened heart of their fallen capital, humans had arranged fuel lines, flares, wreckage, and burning structures into colossal letters visible from our orbiting fleet. 2 words, a declaration, a vow, a curse written in flame higher than our warship hulls, still not kneeling. The Emperor demanded its immediate destruction. But even as we bombed the flames, every Dominion soldier had already seen it. The words burned not just in the city, but in our memory. We had won the first battle. Yet for the first time in Dominion history, it was victory that broke morale and defeat that strengthened the enemy. The message was simple. If humans can resist the Dominion, maybe we all can. We intercepted the first report on the 19th cycle. An enslaved mining sector had revolted, chanting a human war cry they had heard through black market channels. No surrender. We crushed the revolt in hours, but then another lit up, and another, and another. 12 sparks in 3 days. That should not have been possible. Our empire was built on obedience, on inevitability, on fear. Humanity shattered inevitability. Humanity laughed at fear. And for the first time in 3,000 cycles, the galaxy noticed. We watched in disbelief as transmissions spread across hidden networks, outlawed frequencies whispering of Earth's defiance. On worlds where our banners once hung unquestioned, slaves and subjects began asking dangerous questions. Why do we kneel? Why do we obey? Why can humans stand when we cannot? Our admirals dismissed it. Our council denied it. But I saw the reports. Entire systems had begun to hope. That was the first crack. The second came from humanity itself. Weeks after we believed their industry crippled, our scouts detected something impossible. Shipyards roaring back to life. Not with primitive vessels, but with ships built using Dominion designs, reverse-engineered, modified, improved. This should not have happened. No primitive species learns that fast. No species evolves technology in months. Yet humans did. I remember staring at the intercepted schematics in disbelief. Our plasma coils redesigned. Our kinetic barriers enhanced. Our FTL algorithms, rewritten with terrifying elegance. Their engineers did not copy us. They surpassed us. One Dominion scientist, upon seeing the data, whispered what many of us feared. If humans survive long enough, they will surpass the Dominion in everything. The Council panicked. Within a single session, they passed Decree 07 Black, branding humanity not as an enemy, but as a contagion, a plague. A species whose very existence threatened the natural order of Dominion supremacy. Their conclusion was chilling. Humanity must not be conquered. Humanity must be erased. Genocide. Total. Absolute. Not even assimilation. Not even slavery. Extermination. We silenced every channel. Blockaded every lane. Deployed purifiers to burn entire biomes. We swore to the galaxy that Earth was a cancer. A madness of rebellion that must be contained before it infected others. But the galaxy no longer believed us. On the 27th cycle, a rebel fleet ambushed one of our slave convoys. Not humans, not Earth-allied species, just a scattered uprising emboldened by a possibility we thought unthinkable. They fought badly, clumsily, with outdated weapons, and still they fought. Because Earth had shown them that the Dominion could bleed. Then came the moment that sealed our empire's fate. In the ashes of a destroyed listening post, our technicians recovered a transmission, human-made but sent outward, not inward. A broadcast to the oppressed, the chained, the voiceless. A voice we recognized, Admiral Selene Ward. Her message crackled with static, but her words were unmistakable. We are still alive. We are still fighting. You are not alone. Rise not for us, but for yourselves. That message spread faster than any fleet. 4 systems revolted in a day, 9 in a week. Entire species that had bowed for centuries suddenly remembered how to stand. The Dominion had never feared armies. But ideas? Ideas are immortal, and now the greatest idea of all was loose in the dark. The Dominion can fall. Our Emperor, cornered by the truth he could no longer ignore, issued a single order that reverberated through every battle group in the galaxy. Crush Earth before the galaxy rallies behind it. Which is how I now find myself on the bridge of a dreadnought, watching our armada gather for the largest assault in Dominion history. A final strike, a final gamble, a final attempt to erase the mistake we made when we underestimated humankind. Outside my viewport, thousands of warships burn against the void like a second dawn. And yet, for the first time in my life, I am no longer certain we are the sunrise. Perhaps we are the sunset. There are laws in the Dominion older than our star charts, older than our empire, older even than our written word. Laws carved into the foundations of our civilization, relics of a time when we feared the dark rather than ruled it. Most believe those laws were myths, legends, warnings never meant to be awakened again. We were wrong. When the uprising spread and whispers of human hope infected our slaves, our citizens, even our soldiers, the Dominion trembled for the first time in 3,000 cycles. A machine built on obedience cannot withstand the rot of doubt, and humanity had become doubt incarnate. The Emperor saw it, and in fear disguised as fury, he unsealed the law of unmaking extinction mandate, a command spoken in ancient tongue, older than our throne, older than our conquests. Its meaning was simple: erase the species completely, not conquer. Not convert, not enslave, erase. The order spread through our networks like a plague. Every fleet received new authorization codes. Vaults that had not opened in 40 generations unlocked. We unearthed weapons not used since the cleansing wars. Weapons designed not for enemies, but for endings. We deployed graviton spears, each capable of cracking a moon. Star-wound torpedoes, designed to boil atmospheres. Planetfall obelisks, machines that rewrite matter into dust. Instruments of erasure reserved only for dead galaxies and uninhabitable worlds. And we turned them on Earth. I watched from orbit as the first spears fell, carving scars across continents. Oceans vaporized into towering cyclones of steam. Entire mountain ranges shattered like brittle bone. Glass storms raged across deserts. Forests ignited into flaming spirals large enough to be seen from the void. The Emperor forced the galaxy to watch. His broadcast echoed on every channel, every world, every slave outpost. This is the fate of those who defy us. He expected screams. He expected begging. He expected humanity to kneel at last. But there were no pleas, no surrender codes, no cries for mercy, only transmissions of battle plans. Even as their world burned, humans coordinated evacuations, counter-offensives, and fleet maneuvers with terrifying calm. Their planet was dying, and still they fought as if they could win, as if they would win. Their last transmissions from the surface were not prayers, but targeting data. When the evacuation fleets lifted through the smoke of their dying atmosphere, I expected to see despair in their eyes, but through magnified feeds, I saw something far worse. Vengeance. Their stares were not hollow. They were burning, focused, unbroken. Humanity did not look like a species on the brink of extinction. They looked like a species that had been unleashed. We thought destroying their home would break their spirit. Instead, we had removed their last chain. A species with something to protect is dangerous, but a species with nothing left to lose. There is no word in our language for that. As Earth's surface cracked and continents sank into fire, I felt, for the first time, a tremor of fear. Not for my life, not for the Dominion, but for the future. The moment humanity became homeless, they also became limitless. We had not ended the war. We had guaranteed it would never end until one side no longer existed. And as the last blue oceans turned black and silent, I realized a truth our Emperor could not see. We had not destroyed humanity. We had forged them. The galaxy watched the flames of Earth. Thinking it was an ending, I knew, with a sinking certainty, that it was only the beginning. The humans would return, and when they did, They would not be fighting for survival. They would be fighting for revenge. They should have died with their world. That is what our strategists believed. That is what our emperor promised. A species without a home is a species without a future. But humans do not follow the logic of empire. When Earth fell into ash and molten seas, we expected their fleets to scatter into aimless ghosts, leaderless, hopeless, broken by grief. Instead, they vanished with purpose. Entire armadas slipped into starless corridors and outlaw sectors beyond our mapped lanes. For months, they became whispers, shadows, rumors carried by smugglers and deserters. Then the rumors grew teeth. Our first report came from the Helix Fringe. A Dominion patrol ambushed what they believed to be refugee transports. Instead, the refugees unleashed coordinated fire with weapons we had never seen, hybrid designs with Dominion cores and human improvisation. The patrol was annihilated in 7 minutes. 7 minutes, not the act of a dying species, the act of one preparing for war. Humanity regrouped in the dark, in asteroid hollows, derelict ship graveyards, shattered moons, and pirate strongholds, places we once ignored, places that now hid the most dangerous fleet in the galaxy. Exile did not starve them. Exile purified them. They forged a new banner, a black sun on a field of ash. No borders, no nations, no divisions. One symbol, one vow, from the ashes we rise. Our intelligence corps watched in disbelief as humanity accomplished in weeks what takes most civilizations centuries. Their refugees did not fracture into factions. They mobilized. Their survivors did not drown in sorrow. They transformed it. Grief became fuel. Rage became unity. Their children, orphaned by war, trained alongside soldiers, pilots, engineers. There were no civilians anymore. Only participants. Humanity had become a forge. Every outpost they built was a shipyard. Every convoy a mobile factory. Every scientist became a weaponsmith. Every captain a warlord. And every soul, from the smallest child to their last admiral, lived by a single creed: never kneel. Meanwhile, our emperor celebrated his triumph, blind to the storm forming beyond our reach. He had won the ground and lost the horizon, for we began to see a pattern that chilled even our most loyal commanders. Human morale did not break with Earth's destruction. It evolved. Without a homeworld, humanity no longer feared invasion. Without civilians to protect, they no longer hesitated. Without territory to defend, they became fast, unpredictable, ungovernable by conventional strategy. The war was no longer about borders or resources. It was vengeance, distilled and absolute. Then came the event that marked the end of our certainty, a stolen Dominion dreadnought. One of our finest was sighted in the outer reaches, but it no longer bore our sigil. Painted over its hull was the black sun, vast and defiant. The ship broadcast a single human message on all channels. The homeless have come home to the stars. That was when we understood the truth. Too late to undo it. By destroying Earth, our emperor had removed humanity's final weakness: fear of loss. You cannot break what has already been broken. You cannot threaten what has nothing left to protect. You cannot corner a species that has chosen the void itself as its new homeland. Humanity had been many things: reckless, stubborn, chaotic, fragile. But now they were something new, unbound. Our empire trembled. Even the loyal began whispering the unthinkable, that perhaps the war would not end with our victory. That perhaps humanity was the future and we were the past. A dying star, desperately burning brighter before the inevitable dark. The black sun was rising, and in the silent halls of our war councils, a question neither I nor any commander dared to speak aloud began to form. What if humanity cannot be extinguished at all? We expected their retaliation to be chaotic. Blind rage, scattered raids, suicide charges born from grief. That is how lesser species react when cornered. But the humans did not behave like wounded animals. They moved like surgeons. Their first strike hit the Valus Gate, a hyperlane routing nexus feeding 6 Dominion sectors. No assault fleets, no siege lines. Just a precise injection of stealth ships and a wormhole mine that collapsed the lane in a single ignition. Trade halted. Reinforcements stalled. Fuel convoys drifted helplessly in dead space. Before our admirals even finished shouting at each other, humanity struck again. This time, they hit the Orzak cloning forges, the heart of our expendable war legions. Without those forges, our armies bled permanently. A species that once drowned its enemies in replacements suddenly discovered the cost of losing a soldier. And panic spread through our command like a virus. Humanity didn't take territory. They took options. They didn't fight our strength. They amputated it. One after another, the reports arrived. Cold, clinical, terrifying. Station Theta 9 destroyed. Supplies lost. Outer Rim war foundries offline. Cause human sabotage. Hyperlane Echo collapsed. Estimated repair time, 1 cycle. Sector fleets stranded, requesting evacuation. And at the end of every battle log, a final line burned like a scar. Human casualties, extreme. Human morale, unshaken. It made no sense. Their losses were catastrophic. Entire squads erased. Ships gone. Crews vented into void. Any Dominion force would have mutinied under that attrition. Yet humanity only came back angrier, faster, more focused. Their grief had calcified into purpose. They did not fight for planets. They fought for vengeance. Within 1 cycle, they had crippled 9 Dominion sectors. Not conquered, not occupied, crippled. Worlds still under our banners suddenly starved. Fleets sat powerless, engines cold, waiting for fuel that would never arrive. Our governors begged for reinforcements. Our admirals accused one another of incompetence. Our emperor demanded answers no one could give. For the first time in our history, a whisper spread through our vast, mighty empire. Can the Dominion fall? We had mocked humanity as primitive. We had called them emotional, irrational, undisciplined. But this was not the rage of primitives. This was cold, human fury. Weaponized, organized, evolved. Their fleets appeared from void like ghosts, never where we expected, never where they should be. They ignored our fortresses and butchered our logistics. They hunted fuel ships, relay stations, slipspace beacons, listening arrays. They tore out our eyes, our arteries, our breath. We, the eternal conquerors, were suddenly blind, choking, and afraid. Our admirals locked themselves in war rooms, screaming over tactical holomaps, arguing over whether humanity had allies. They did not. But the humans had something far more dangerous than allies: clarity. They fought with no politics, no Senate, no rival factions, no hesitation, just a single unified directive: break the Dominion. In taverns, spaceports, and factory halls across our territory, our civilians began speaking the unthinkable. Maybe the Emperor was wrong. Maybe humanity should have been feared. Some even prayed, not to our gods, but to theirs, terrified that humans might actually be listening. That was when I finally understood. We thought destroying Earth would end a species. Instead, we had removed their last weakness. A species with nothing left to lose, become something new, something unstoppable. And now, across the ruins of our supply lines, in the silence of our darkened sectors, in the fire of every fallen foundry, we could feel it. Humanity was no longer running. They were hunting. No one believed it could happen. Not our admirals. Not our priests. Not even our emperor. The Dominion Corps was legend, the oldest, most fortified region in the galaxy. 10,000 defense satellites, planet-encircling ion shields, 3 grand fleets stationed in permanent orbit. We were untouchable, invincible, eternal, until humanity arrived, not sneaking, not striking from shadows, but openly, brazenly, in full force. Their Black Sun fleet tore through the Orion Gate, guns alive with fire and vengeance. And the impossible happened. Our core systems burned. Worlds that had not seen war in 1,000 years screamed under bombardment. Fleets built over generations vanished in hours. Our throne world, Valor Prime, shook as if the heavens themselves were cracking apart. From the palace windows, I watched the unthinkable: Dominion ships, our ships, falling from the sky like burning meteors. Inside the throne hall, ministers wailed. Generals argued. Servants fled. The emperor, once godlike in presence, sat silent on his obsidian throne, gripping its arms with white, shaking knuckles. The distant thunder of orbital fire rolled through our marble floors. Dust drifted from the golden ceilings like dying snowflakes. Then came the final blow. The palace shields collapsed. The impact lights flickered red across the walls. Smoke seeped through the grand doors. The emperor rose, but his voice, once the roar of an empire, was thin, papery, desperate. "They dare," he whispered. "They dare." But he was not a god anymore. He was a man who had awakened a sleeping monster. The throne doors exploded inward. Through the smoke and ruin, the humans entered, armored, silent, unbreakable. At their front walked a figure every Dominion child had been taught to fear, hate and mock. Yet here she stood, alive and unstoppable, Admiral Selene Ward, the woman we thought we killed, the voice we tried to silence, the symbol we failed to erase. Her armor, black as a starless void, reflected the burning throne room. Her eyes, ice-cold, steady, merciless, never left the emperor. Around us, Dominion guards dropped weapons rather than face her. Human soldiers fanned out, taking control with mechanical precision. No speeches, no gloating, no rage, just purpose. The emperor inhaled shakily, puffing himself up in one last performance of power. His voice quivered, but he forced it loud enough to echo, "You stand in the heart of the Dominion. I am ruler of 1,000 worlds. You will kneel before me. You all will kneel before the Dominion." His words trembled against the crackle of fires eating the once great hall. Selene Ward stepped forward, one step, then another. No blaster raised, no threat spoken. Just a gaze sharp enough to cut empires. When she finally stopped at the foot of the throne, her reply was a whisper, but it carried more weight than all the emperor's legions. "Kneel first." Silence swallowed the hall. The emperor opened his mouth, perhaps to scream, perhaps to order an attack, but no sound came. His empire was gone. His fleets were dust. His throne was surrounded. His fate was sealed, and so, with hands trembling, knees buckling, and eyes full of the terror he once inflicted on others, the emperor knelt, ruler of 1,000 worlds, breaker of planets, master of dominions, brought to his knees by the species he tried to erase. Humanity did not cheer. They did not celebrate. They simply watched, cold, resolute, unmerciful, because this was never about triumph. It was about justice. As the emperor bowed, Selene turned her head slightly, not to him, but to the galaxy itself. And in that moment, every world, every species, every ruler understood the new truth of our age. Humanity had risen from ashes, not as victims, not as rebels, but as a force the galaxy would never again dare to break. And the Dominion died on its knees.